give a shout out to every single person who's a student in either college or Columbus Academy. Because being a student in the last 2 years has been awful in many, many ways. And I have been so impressed by how our students, particularly at Columbus Academy, but as students in college as well, they've kind of put up with whatever an institution has told them to do. And some kids get locked in their dorm rooms and, you know, for endless periods of time and told they can't go in the dining hall. And at Columbus Academy, we had one-way hallways. I mean, stuff was just nuts for a while. And we really want to get it as back to normal as we can. So if you wouldn't mind joining me in giving a huge round of applause to everyone who has worked so hard. And you know, the achievement expectations don't stop. And that's one of the hardest things. So everything that you remember about how challenging Columbus Academy was, that hasn't changed. And our teachers are still asking a lot of our students in all good ways, but it's hard to do. One of the things that hasn't really had to be altered too much is the junior speech. And all of you who have attended Columbus Academy remember giving a junior speech. And it's been virtually uninterrupted, so it seemed like a really good idea to give you an example of what was going on literally this semester. Jacob Mowery arrived as a freshman from Northland Prep and Fitness Academy, a charter school right near where he lived. He was already a spelling bee star, I've been told, and he was a proficient public speaker when he applied to the school. And he received lots of support from his parents and from teachers, an encouragement to apply to Columbus Academy and kind of stretch his academic muscles. I want to tell you how lucky I think we are that he chose us. He has a love of math and science and computer science, and it's been developed and certainly emboldened at our time at Columbus Academy. And we feel as that we've had some impact on him, but I'm very happy to know that you can go to Northland Prep and decide to come to Columbus Academy, and it becomes a great experience. His story is certainly one I hope we see more of at school. Students from all over different parts of the city finding their way to us and giving us what they have to offer and hoping that we get to be part of developing them. So now for the formal introduction of the junior speech in its typical way. Our next speaker is Jacob Mowery. He came to Columbus Academy in 9th grade.
You know, nowadays the junior speech is done all iPad. They want you to bring the iPad up to the podium. But I didn't bring that. I have a little piece of paper like people used to in the olden days. Don't worry, it's going to flip around and make paper noises. Don't get scared. Back in April, my lifelong friend Atticus messaged me with a strange question. You see, the first thing you have to know about Atticus, the first thing I tell people about him, is that he's very determined. If he doesn't have something he wants or sees something that isn't right with the world, he takes it as a personal challenge to make it himself. Atticus's question was, can a robot write poetry? Machines have been able to output words for a long time, and neural networks capable of talking to humans exist today right on the internet. So I replied, I'm sure someone very talented with a lot of time could make one. Atticus's next response naturally was, cool, so how do I make one? Atticus had never taken a computer science class. In fact, he had never written a line of code in his life. Regardless, he took it upon himself to learn the inner workings of an artificial intelligence that could analyze the patterns in thousands of haiku and create one of its very own. Mr. Feinberg would love this thing. if it worked. We decided on the name Poetrinator 3000, like an episode of the Jetsons. And although it's just in its preliminary stages, we hope it'll be ready soon. The coding was one thing, but the project as a concept stuck in the back of my mind beyond the sheer mechanics of sitting and writing a program to perform a task. Can a robot write poetry? If the machine spat out a set of lines that resembled a poem in structure and meter, is that a poem? My first conclusion was a poem has to be defined by the meaning put into it. Artificial intelligence is just that, artificial. It didn't put a message into the poem because what message could it portray? The AI has no experiences or life with which to write its own poem. It, as a part of its programming and process, has read hundreds of poems about forests, but it couldn't tell you what being in a forest is like, only the way that other poems have described that experience. The writing returned by the machine may resemble a poem in every way it can, but the machine could not tell me what that writing means. Should we assume, then, that what the machine produced is inherently meaningless? If we decide that AI has no intent to convey a theme or a message, what is that art without intent? What do we even call it? To portray what I'm talking about, I generated a haiku made by an artificial intelligence at random. Leaf drifts as spring falls, forgotten in tranquil minds. Fields wave across land. I think this poem is beautiful, but you can tell that it was written by something that didn't quite get what it was saying. That first line is particularly uncanny to me. It says, leaf drifts as spring falls. Leaves usually fall in the fall, not spring. But the AI that wrote this poem seems to have chosen a season at random to fit a 5-7-5 monosyllabic syllable structure. The machine's decision between spring and fall, the two monosyllabic seasons, was a coin flip. But to us, it's 6 months of our lives and the difference between red and green leaves. Now, we do have to stop here and acknowledge that this haiku has purpose on at least one level. A computer scientist set out to make a program that produces poems, and it spat out a poem as soon as I pressed the button. As a machine that completes a task, it is successful 100% of the time. You could call this the intent or meaning of every single one of the machine's actions, but it's not a very satisfactory meaning for a poem. I'm sure if you were to write a haiku, more thought would be put into it than the machine's algorithmic process of rolling dice and inserting words from a database. Furthermore, if you were to sit at your desk and write the same poem that the machine just made, it would be silly to consider the robot's poem and the human's poem on the same terms of intent. The human, even if it were mindlessly making a poem, would still have to translate and think about a leaf and falling and spring while typing, while the AI has nothing to think about. If no thought was put into its creation, it would seem a fruitless endeavor to put thought back in. But that's not really true, right? I still called it beautiful. That's me putting thought in. I really like this poem that I chose to show you, and that's a crucial distinction. When I hear fields wave across land, I feel something. Because even though the machine that made this poem has never seen a field swaying from the wind, I have. Even if a poem has no live author to impose meaning to it, I am still the interpreter of what is on the page. By my reading of the poem and translating its themes through the way I say it and the way I think about it, I am giving it my own intent. The author and the audience need each other to translate an idea into life. An author can write a beautiful and meaningful poem, and they will get to keep that to themselves. It's real. But if the audience is absent, it's only meaningful to the author. That relationship can go the other way as well. A meaningless poem, authorless and inanimate, is reanimated by my interpretation. If I find intent in art, it is meaningful, even if the author is absent. So I implore you to make meaning in your world. Find beauty in things, even if there wasn't any to begin with until you observed it. Fields waving across land doesn't have to mean anything to you, but it has the capability to. The moment that you find something of your own in the sway of the fields and the words of a machine, you use your hidden power to make it human. Art without intent is still art. It just requires more work from us to make it meaningful and beautiful and human. Thank you.